Welcome to Hannity. It is the biggest political scandal in modern American history. The FISA warrant is now out, and yes, we on this program were right. The Trump campaign was spied on by Obama's Justice Department using Russian lies bought and paid for by the DNC and Hillary Clinton to obtain a FISA warrant against Trump campaign associate Carter Page, all in an attempt to rig, steal, whatever adjective you want, a presidential election. Carter Page will join us in just a moment. Now, meanwhile, the mainstream media, they could care less about any of this, as they have been peddling the American people lies, conspiracy theories, anti-Trump hate since even before Donald Trump was ever elected. Instead, they are once again in panic crisis mode over the president's push to remove top security clearances from who? Many of the former deep state Obama-era officials who propagated all these Russian lies that were found in Hillary's bought and paid for dirty dossier, and by the way, are still, to this day, politicizing and weaponizing the powerful tools of intelligence. It's all happening on fake news CNN, conspiracy TV, MSNBC. In just a moment, we will be naming names, calling out Comrade John Brennan and the leaker and liar himself, James Clapper. By the way, if you're friends with him, tell him to tune in. And also tonight, new details on how President Trump is countering the Iranian threat with a policy of, yeah, you guessed it, peace through strength. And we're going to show you how some in the media actually now seem more sympathetic to this evil regime in Iran than to our own sitting president. It's pretty pathetic. Politics at our southern border. President Trump is calling them out in a major way today. Stay tuned. Our jam-packed, news-breaking opening monologue. Straight ahead. All right, the now infamous Clinton dirty dossier was the single key piece of evidence that was used in 4 FISA applications by the FBI in order to spy on Trump campaign associate and, of course, the president-elect, and now the president, Donald Trump. Without the dossier, there would be no FISA warrant against Carter Page. He will join us in a few minutes. This is an irrefutable fact. And of course, we all know that this dirty dossier was created by a former foreign spy, Christopher Steele, who ultimately really was paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, all to dig up dirt and lies on Donald Trump. In other words, it was political op research filled with all things Russian lies that even Steele himself has admitted was totally unverified and uncorroborated. And he even said, at best, it was raw intelligence and only had a 50-50 chance of being true, most of which has now been totally debunked. And yet it was passed people and FISA court judges as real, credible evidence by top FBI, DOJ officials to obtain the FISA as another, oh my gosh, earth-shattering, vain outrage moment, an unprecedented abuse of power. In other words, their typical daily Donald Trump freak out. We've got the video proof. Take a look.
The president wants to silence his critics, period. And maybe he thinks this is a way to do it. Maybe he can say, well, they don't know what they're talking about if they don't have clearance anymore.
The idea that the president would be revoking security clearance, not based on wrongdoing, just based on words, is shameful.
Well, but I'm not comfortable with vindictiveness because to me, that's very dictator.
Well, that's his middle name.
He represents the office of the presidency of the United States. This threat sounds more like he leads Turkey or the Philippines, not like he leads the United States of America.
Let's be honest what this is about, Willie. This is an abuse of executive power. This is Erdogan's Turkey. This is not what the United States of America should be.
This is so extraordinary. The last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship.
Make no mistake, that's the only thing this is about, is a cowardly action of someone who is afraid of criticism.
By the way, the last guy's the biggest liar in the country. Did it ever occur to these people why a former official no longer employed by the government would still have top secret clearance? They supposedly care so much about the dangers of Russia. Hillary Clinton paid for these Russian lies in what is nothing but a disinformation propaganda campaign to manipulate the minds of the American people and steal an election. And the deep state helped her every single step of the way. Is that not abuse of power? You don't see the danger in this? And then you're seeing the media, the Democrats, sticking up for the most corrupt people, their swamp friends that abuse the power that we gave them, we the people. For example, one time CIA Director John Brennan hates Donald Trump. He's allowed to. He's the former communist. How he ever became the CIA director is unbelievable to me. He's also currently a paid hack over at Conspiracy TV, MSNBC, which is so appropriate. But during his time as the CIA director, Brennan actually leaked the contents of this dossier before the election to then Senator Harry Reid, who then subsequently alerted the public in an open letter to James Comey. Really? The CIA director? Sounds like Pravda. Sounds like the KGB. After stepping down as CIA director, John Brennan took all of his hatred publicly on cable news, getting paid, even, which is okay, even calling the sitting president of the United States a traitor? Really? This guy who leaked the Russian lies. What's this?
I think there's a big question, first of all, in terms of those who are on Mr. Trump's national security team, whether they can continue to serve in good conscience an individual who basically betrayed his nation. What Mr. Trump did yesterday was to betray the women and men of the FBI, the CIA, NSA, and others, and to betray the American public. And that's why I use the term that this is nothing short of treasonous, because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and it needs to stop. And Mr. Trump needs to understand that there are going to be consequences for him, too.
The press needs to report what we're going to put on the screen. It says, this is CIA policy. In the case of former directors, the agency holds their security clearance and renews it every 5 years for the rest of their lives. However, that requires former CIA directors to behave like current CIA employees. Now, what you just saw, does that seem like the behavior of a current CIA employee saying what he just said, calling the president of the United States a traitor? And this no way undermines the CIA's mission? Really? What about him politicizing intelligence as an employee of NBC? That's pretty acceptable for a current CIA employee? I don't think so. And that brings us to the well-known leaker and liar himself, James Clapper. Remember, he's the former director of national intelligence, widely believed to have leaked details of the infamous dossier to CNN, where he's now employed. Fake news. And yet CNN just can't imagine why such an honorable person like him would lose his security clearance. Let's take a look.
CNN national security analyst James Clapper. And given the partisan attacks on him, I just want to take a moment and walk you through his ample nonpartisan resume. He served as director of national intelligence during the Obama administration. Before that, as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency under the first President Bush and Bill Clinton. General Clapper joined the Air Force in 1963, served 2 tours of combat during the Vietnam War, is the recipient of an Air Force Distinguished Service Medal, 2 Defense Distinguished Service Medals, and 3 Distinguished Service Medals for national intelligence.
Okay, Anderson, it was James leaks of classified information to the media endanger vital intelligence sources and methods and damage international relations required to better equip the United States government elements to prevent unauthorized disclosures. So it's clear that people like Clapper and Brennan and many other deep state sycophants They should in no way, none of them, have any access to our government's secrets. As a matter of fact, they ought to all be under investigation because their bias is so abusive, clouded their judgment. They're the ones that stomped on the rights of the American people. They're the ones that tried to propagandize, disinform the American people, all to affect an election. And to this day, they still are. And to this day, breaking their own government policies that they signed off on. Every American tonight, you need to demand that they not only lose their special government privileges, but they need to be held accountable for their blatant abuse of power. By the way, Robert Mueller, are you watching? Do you have your people watching? Because this is your Russia collusion story. And by the way, Jeff Sessions, where are you? Has anyone seen you except for school children? All right, let's shift gears. Let's turn our attention to the hostile regime of Iran. Over the weekend, the president issued a stern warning to the rogue state, tweeting, quote, to the president of Iran, Rouhani. He said, never, ever again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. Now, per usual, this tweet set off, yes, predictable, widespread, breast-wing media. Shocking. Take a look.
He criticized several times Barack Obama and said, you just wait, he's going to.
And funding terrorism throughout the world. And, of course, aggressively pursuing nuclear weapons and threatening all of our. He is also focusing on a critical part of our national security right here at home. Earlier today, he had very tough words for Democrats that literally want to eliminate ICE. In other words, protection of our southern borders, wide open borders. Are they serious? Take a look.
But Democratic politicians want to abolish ICE. They want to see open borders. Can you imagine? You know, every once in a while you'll hear something, and usually you understand, like in deal making, you always have to understand the other side. When you hear open borders, when you hear get rid of ICE, when you hear some of the things that they're proposing, it's like you can't even understand it. Can you imagine open borders? You'd have millions of people pouring into our country. Millions and millions of people. Many people that you don't want in our country. But you would have millions of people pouring into our country. The crime would be unbelievable. And they want to get rid of the crime fighter on top of everything else. Open the border and get rid of your crime fighters. You don't understand? Understands it.
All right, with the 2018 midterms just a few short months away, it's clear that Democrats in this country have no real plan to improve America. Instead, they want to regain power in order to take more and more money. In other words, they want their crumbs back. They want to take back the Trump tax cuts. They want to impeach President Trump. They want to preserve the disaster of Obamacare, open borders, stop Kavanaugh, and they obviously we have a new addition to our list. They want to kill off all these legitimate investigations into what really happened during the 2016 election, the Obama-era deep state corruption, the rigging of an election, the rigging of an investigation. Now, tonight, we have bad news for the Democrats and everyone else actively working against President Trump. Look at this Gallup poll. President Trump just hit the highest approval rating of his presidency. And according to The Hill, 3/4 of Americans will never vote for a socialist. It should be 99.9%, but we'll get to that another night. I'll say it again. This is the most important midterm elections in our lifetime. Make your voices heard. The future of this country, our rights and future as a constitutional republic are at stake. All right. Also tonight, we have a big announcement later in the show. And by the way, the Trump cone tapes are out, and we'll be giving you the details of that in just a minute. But first, with reaction to our top story, the man at the center of it all, former Trump campaign associate, and he is the all for FISA applications, Carter Page. Good to see you. Thank you.
Great to see you, Sean.
Okay. You went. You told me a lot this week. You went to Russia a lot.
Yes.
Spent years there.
Yes.
How many times after you would go there did you get debriefed by our intelligence agencies, CIA, FBI, et cetera?
I lost track of time. You know, they whenever they asked questions, I was always ready to offer.
And you love your country?
No question.
Were you ever approached to be a spy?
Never in my life, no.
How do you respond to the characterization of you in the FISA warrants?
You know, it's just a unhidden attack, way of attacking the Trump campaign. I mean, it's very clear, particularly given, as you said, the connection with the dodgy dossier. So,
all right. So so in June of 2016, you were still a Trump campaign associate at that point?
Yes.
Okay. You go to Moscow. Who specifically invited you to Moscow?
The university, New Economic School.
No, who? Name. I want the name.
It was the rector. So,
do you remember his name?
Shlomo Weber. He's the rector.
Shlomo Weber. Yeah. Why did Shlomo Weber invite you?
I've dealt with a lot of Russian scholars over the year. I did my PhD at University of London, and I've spoken at most of the top universities in Moscow, New Economic School, Moscow State University, the MGIMO, all of them.
Okay. So, and in all of this time, whenever your government asked to debrief you, you would tell them.
Absolutely.
Did you work for the government?
Well, I served 5 years in the U.S. Navy. Absolutely.
You know I'm not asking that question. You're smart. Did you work for our intelligence agencies?
I was always, you know, if they had questions, I was always willing to help out.
I didn't ask if you had questions. Did you work for our intelligence agencies?
I was never paid. I was never paid for any intelligence.
Were you given directions by our intelligence agencies ever if they wanted you to do things?
No. No.
Never?
No.
They never, when you were on your trip, said, by the way, would you mind looking into this?
They said, you know, there was always an understanding that I would be an open book and willing to help. You know, I think there's so much misunderstanding. I think as we saw in Helsinki last week, that I was always ready and willing to provide some full details whenever.
How did Christopher Steele know you were there?
It's a great question. It's a great. Well, you know, I think his piece came out after I had already left, and you know it had been in a few.
Who could have informed Steele of that? Because that's an important question.
We'll see. You know,
because of what they're saying about you, they're basically saying, well, and by the way, if you're such a bad person, why are you here on this set and not in jail?
Again, the Washington Post, they had a big leak that last June that I spent 10 hours talking to the FBI. And, you know, again, like I mentioned, I'm always willing to talk to,
and you've talked to Mueller's team?
You know, that's according to various leaks in the New York Times and Washington Post. Last year, I supposedly did, and I won't deny that.
Is there an ongoing investigation into you, or is this just hyperbole in these FISA warrants to get to Trump?
Those are old FISA. You know, I think the last one ended.
Rod Rosenstein signed the last one.
In June of 2017, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about that? Do you feel that they have taken away your rights? Will you sue the government?
I'm already suing the government in the Southern District of New York. I just want $1 and some honesty.
All right. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Sean.
All right, when we come back, reaction. House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes, a very big announcement, and the Trump Cohn tapes are released. That's coming up next.
Read our 3-page memo that was designed to be just a short compilation to protect sources and methods, because we only wanted to get out the main points, which were what? That they used the dirt from the Clinton campaign to make up the bulk of the FISA application. Matter of fact, they lead with it in the FISA application. That's what we really wanted to get out to the American people, because we believed at that time that most Americans would agree, and I think they would agree if journalism wasn't so dead, as you said in your monologue. Most Americans, when you talk to them, when they're not watching the other cable news networks, and you talk to them about, is it okay for me as a politician to go out and pay someone to dig up dirt on my opposing candidate, whether it's running for president or governor or something else, and then feed it into the FBI, an FBI that's controlled by my own party. That only happens in Banana Republic. So that was the point of the memo. And it's sad that the media has failed to cover it. But what's even more surprising now is now that we've been totally vindicated with the release of this FISA, just the pieces of the FISA applications over the weekend, you continue to see the media, they're going absolutely crazy. And I've never seen anything like it. And I think like you said, journalism's dead in this country, and I don't know what to do about it.
You know, what is ironic in all of this is Hillary funnels money through a law firm. They hire an op research firm. And I have no problem with op research. That's politics. Then they hire a foreign national. I thought foreign nationals weren't supposed to impact our elections. But the dossier, according to Steele himself in an interrogatory in Great Britain, he says it's raw intelligence, never verified, never corroborated. But everybody that signed off on that warrant signed off on unverified, uncorroborated Russian lies that were literally designed to really steal an election after they rigged an investigation into what is irrefutable crimes, incontrovertible evidence of obstruction and a violation of the Patriot Act by Hillary. Well, and I'm just wondering, where is this? How does our constitutional republic survive?
Well, it can't survive without it cannot survive without a free and open press actually doing their job, right? So let's just talk about the obvious thing that's out there that you're alluding to, and that is that the very thing that the Mueller investigation is all about is seeing if the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary and use it against her. Now, we actually know that that is exactly what Hillary Clinton did. Hillary Clinton paid people, went through intermediaries that got dirt from Russians to use it against Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. So let's start there. But then let's go with some of the other nonsense that you're seeing now. You actually have people out there in the media, mainstream media, that are now talking about, well, the regs don't necessarily say that you have to verify all the evidence. Well, look, I think that's crazy talk. You absolutely should have to verify and validate the evidence that you're using to have probable cause when you go to a secret court to spy on an American citizen.
But they fed the court Russian lies bought and paid for by the opposition candidate, and they purposely didn't inform the court. No court would have approved these warrants if they knew the truth.
They went out of their way not to do it. So that's another point that they've been trying to make. So they went out of their way instead of just saying, look, candidate 2 paid for this dirt on candidate 1. Candidate 2 would have been Hillary Clinton. That would have been a very simple way to describe it in the FISA application before the judge. Now, here's something else that actually my colleagues, Mr. Gowdy and Mr. Ratcliffe from Texas, who did a lot of these FISA warrants in his career, and has had the opportunity to look at these in quite detail. He continually makes the point, which is a very good one. It's not so much how wrong it is, what they put into the FISA applications. That's really bad. But what's even worse is the exculpatory evidence that they left on the cutting room floor. So, wow. For example, there's something really important. If you had the information that you have with Bruce Orr, okay, who's at the heart of this because his wife was working for Fusion GPS, the Bruce Orr information, he knew that Christopher Steele didn't like Trump and didn't want Trump to win. The FBI had that in September.
His wife helped put it together.
That's right.
What you did is to help this Democratic Republic survive. I actually worry about this abuse of power. I worry about a corrupt media. We're not going to stop on this program. Thank you for all you've done, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. All right, when we come back, we have breaking news. The Cohn Trump audio is out. I'll give you a hint. A huge dud. Thud dud. Straight ahead. All right, this is a Fox News Alert. Michael Cohn's recording of his former client, Donald Trump, has now been made public. This was obtained by CNN and given to them by Cohn's attorney, longtime friend of this program, Lanny Davis. Fox News has not verified the tape. Here's a clip. Take a listen. It's muffled.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding. Yes, and it's all the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that, and I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be. What financing? We'll have to pay you. So no. I got.
Here with reaction, Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter, former Clinton pollster, advisor Mark Penn. Look at that. This book out today, #1 book in the country on Amazon.com. Right now, The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. By the way, right after this show, Greg is going to be hosting a live online book signing. He can obviously write it out to you. And by the way, order a copy, submit a question. My website, Hannity.com. Congratulations, #1 in the country. Thank you very much. You deserve it very much. And the president just tweeted out about it, by the way. Let's start with the tape. Yeah. And I've known Michael, I've been friends with Michael for a long time. And I'm a little surprised at a recording of a client. That surprises me. But with that said, as I listen to all of this, I'm listening to something that never happened. Right. That it was a billionaire, and they're just saying, oh, I don't want the divorce to come, records to come out, because divorces are always usually ugly, right? Yeah. And then they talk about, well, pay cash or check, it's muffled. Right. Well, I don't see anything here. I see a dud.
There's nothing illegal about paying somebody who wants money in exchange for remaining silent. I used to negotiate contracts all the time.
Aren't they called non-disclosure?
Yes, to make people go away and be quiet. There's nothing illegal about it.
Do people do those deals whether things really happen or not?
And look, he's a billionaire. There's a fine line between somebody exercising their free speech to talk about you and extortion to remain quiet.
Is it often cheaper for people to
pay? It's the cost of doing business. I used to tell clients this all the time. It's sort of a nuisance value settlement for a billionaire to pay $150,000. But he never paid a nickel. That's the important part to remember here. And whether there's a discussion about paying cash or check, none of it ever happened. So no crime
does it matter that the American Media Corporation? Yes. Does it matter that they bought a story and didn't use it?
No, it's up to them. They bought the rights to it. For all we know,
you know, say, well, it's a campaign contribution.
Donald Trump could have bought the rights from them. I mean, these things are negotiated among parties all the time.
No legal issues at all.
None whatsoever. It is not a crime. This is all just a red herring to smear the president about personal matters that have nothing to do with the Trump-Russia collusion hoax.
Let me go to Sarah. Sarah, I listened to it closely. It sounds like a conversation between a lawyer and a client about just, you know, how do you deal with stuff that comes up in a campaign and not have big problems, but nothing happened.
That's right. It's not very clear. But one of the things that I think was interesting was the way he was saying, Mr. Cohen was saying, no. It wasn't like he was saying, no, we can't do that. I mean, if that's the assumption, he was saying, oh, no, we're not going to do it that way. That's the way it came across to me. Now, we don't know unless we talk to Mr. Cohen
not do it
and
what way?
President Trump.
Not do it that way. What does that mean? Is that talking about cash or a check?
Yeah. So he was saying, oh, no, not cash. That's the way it sounded to me. Yeah. But we have to talk. I mean, obviously, Mr. Cohen has to speak. Lanny Davis did come out and talk to CNN, and he said he wanted to have this side of the story. But I'm kind of stunned like you are, Sean. The fact that the attorney would be recording this and apparently without his client's knowledge and then using this later, and also shows how far they're willing to go to squeeze people to try to get something out of them. And this is a real smear campaign. Of course, this was a decision that Donald Trump made 10 years ago. This is something that's coming out. I'm sure it's publicly embarrassing for him and his family, and it's probably very difficult. But
in other words, like when they're talking about, well, we have a right to fight, not to release the details of a divorce. If you're running for president, I don't think anybody wants that out.
That's right. Nobody wants that out. And it appears, though, what's happening here is they're doing everything in their power to pressure Michael Cohen to get everything they can from him
like to squeezing Manafort, putting the screws to him so that he'll sing or compose, so that he'll then eventually the information could be used to prosecute or impeach Trump. Sounds like Judge Ellis III. All right, let me go to Mark Penn. Mark, breaking news, obviously. We had you on about a different issue, but you're a longtime Clinton pollster. You're one of the few Democrats, like Alan Dershowitz, that has looked at what has happened here as it relates to FISA warrants, lies paid for, unverified, to get warrants to spy on opposition party candidates, and literally, even though it's unverified, fed to FISA judges like it's gospel truth, and how dangerous this is for this country.
Well, I completely agree. I think it is an incredible violation of American civil liberties that the dossier was seen as credible evidence to use a secret court, which is really for ferreting out terrorists, to spy on Americans in American political campaigns. And the only thing worse than that now is devolving back to 1998 and now spending a year investigating payments to people, whether or not they had affairs or not. This is bringing this country down.
Do you really? I honestly have never seen it this bad. I mean, if Donald Trump cured cancer and gave every American $10 million, I am convinced the media would still hate him. Even if he adopted their full agenda, they would hate him. There's nothing. It's like if Donald Trump tweets a single word they don't like, they're like hyperventilating all over the media.
Well, it's rather remarkable when you look at the NBC poll that basically NBC says, well, they disagree with everything he's doing, and his job rating goes up. His personal favorable goes up.
By the way, he's at his highest
intensity of support
numbers.
goes up.
You're right.
It's incredible. So something else is going on in the country.
And you're a pollster.
The polls really have to capture. I'm a pollster, and something else is going on in the country. There's several narratives going on at once, and too often only one side of that narrative is being. There's a very strong economy. People want a country that stands up.
Do you
yes,
see a
they don't
blue
like
wave,
the tweets.
or do you
yes,
see
there's a lot of stuff
no
they
way?
don't like.
Do you see a blue wave
There's a
in your
blue
poll?
edge. Look, there's a blue edge. Anybody after 2 years, usually Congress turns over. There's still a blue edge. But remember, Trump is actually stronger than people think. The economy is stronger than people think. I think this misjudging, this hysteria, this going to socialists is in fact hurting the Democrats' chance to win.
They're doing the right thing. They should stay exactly on the path they're on. I know you're totally
I knew
wrong
you would
on
say that.
All right. So where does this tape go? I know it'll be, the next hyperventilating moment of the media, but if there's no there, what's the point?
Well, there is no point to it. It's irrelevant.
Do you think they're trying to pressure Michael Cohen that much, that they're trying to, because I didn't like.
To me, it's a sign of desperation.
I think what they did to him and his office, there's something that does not seem right in any of it.
Oh, I agree. These are rather thuggish tactics, but it doesn't surprise me now, coming from the federal government and the FBI and Robert Mueller. They're all using pretty much the same tactics.
Your door's next after this book,
Yeah, or your door.
And thanks. Why my door? Why don't they go to Sarah's house? Sarah's available.
They've been listening to all your conversations. They have all your text messages in your. I mean, actually, I told my wife I operate on the assumption that I'm being monitored, and
this is the United States.
Yes, and it's tragic to say, but we are now in a position of being afraid of our own government.
Sarah?
I have to agree with Greg on this, and I have to agree with you, Sean. I mean, they're pressuring Paul. Look what they did to Paul Manafort. Look what they did to George Papadopoulos. Look what they did to General Flynn. This is another strong-arm tactic, and that's what they're trying to do, and they're desperate.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's really unbelievable to me. Hang on, is this breaking news? Anyway, by the way, Rudy says the transcript that we provided, CNN accurately reflects the conversation. So they don't care, and they shouldn't legally.
It's not a crime.
In 13 minutes from now, Hannity.com, Greg will sign the #1 book in the country. He'll sign it to you. If you have any questions, Hannity.com, he will be answering. Congratulations. We're proud of you.
Thank you.
This is a great book. Well done. And you did it all yourself.
I did.
Dr. Gorka and Dan Bongino. And by the way, we have a big announcement. It'll surprise you. I promise that. Next. All right, Michael Cohen has just released a once secretly recorded conversation between he and Donald Trump to CNN. Fox News has not independently verified the tape. Fox News joining us now is national security strategist Dr. Gorka, former Secret Service agent, NRA TV contributor Dan Bongino. I have known Michael a long time. I like Michael. He has a lovely family. I honestly think what they've done to him is wrong. I was not a client of his, although I did ask him a legal question on. We used to talk privately, and but we didn't have a business relationship. And just to be totally transparent, I think what they did to him is wrong. I read this tape and I don't see any there. It seems like a dud, and I don't know what these other 11 tapes are about. What's your reaction, Dan?
You know, Sean, I don't know Michael Cohen. I've never met him, but I'm sorry. This is just straight up sleazy. You know, one thing I know from people who've worked for Donald Trump, and I know a lot of them, is they'll tell you this. He's fiercely loyal to his people. He doesn't pretend to be a saint, but he's ferociously loyal to his people. It's really ridiculous that this guy was giving him legal advice and is then recording him and then releasing the tapes. And one more thing, Sean, he better be damn sure Donald Trump was in New York for all those calls where it's a one-party consent state. Because if Trump was in Florida at Mar-a-Lago while he's on one of those 12 calls, Florida's a two-party consent state.
Does that matter?
And Cohen may have committed a crime himself.
From a one-party consent state, though?
It matters to who you record. Yes, if Donald Trump was in Florida and Cohen was in New York, you can't record him without his consent.
Say this. I'm assuming, and I don't know why he recorded him, but I'm assuming that Michael Cohen never thought his office was going to get raided either, and he wasn't going to release this on his own. Dr. Gorka.
You know.
Yeah, I can't talk for Michael Cohen. I've never met him either. Let's talk about the broader reality here. CNN still doesn't get it. Donald Trump is the president, and CNN has lost the plot. Instead of actually being a news organization, and they could report on the fact that, according to a Wall Street Journal NBC poll, Donald Trump has the highest approval rating in his 18th month than any president since
Dr.
polling
Gorka,
began.
do you know what, Barclays,
except
they upped their estimate for GDP growth for the second quarter to
I know.
5.
That was my next point. Wow. That was my next point, Sean. So instead of talking about GDP predictions that affect all Americans, instead of talking about the president's historic popularity, with one exception, George Bush after 9/11, they're talking about this tape that says nothing. I mean, what is it going to be next, Sean? Is it going to be a secret video of Barron Trump's first birthday party and he's eating cake? They are making a mockery of themselves.
But as I said, I think if he cured cancer, Dan, they'd still hate him.
You know, Sean, wait till the GDP numbers come out on Friday. If we hit 5%,
if we have 4%,
a figure we never hit.
Listen, lower expectations. The previous president in 8 years is the only president never to have 3% GDP growth in a year. GDP growth.
He's never had an annual. You're absolutely right, and you are absolutely correct. He's the only president in modern U.S. history to not do that. Not one annual year, 3%.
Now we have more
GDP
jobs
growth
available than people on unemployment. 2 million fewer people on food stamps. Yeah, America's back. All right, thank you both. Big announcement next. All right, we have a huge announcement. On Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Roseanne Barr will speak out and join us for an exclusive interview. You don't want to miss that, Thursday night, 9 p.m. All right, in 15 seconds, if you go to Hannity.com, you can see our friend Greg Jarrett. It's the #1 book in the country, a great book. We will always be fair and balanced, but not the destroy Trump media. Let not your heart be troubled. There she is. What wiseacre comment do you have, Miss Ingraham?